Government Television. Welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting. Originating from the County Administrative Center, located at 1115 Truxton Avenue in Bakersfield, California. Grounded in ideas, energy, and innovation, Kern County's vision is to be a driving force for the world's fifth largest economy. And our mission is to exceed expectations of the communities we serve, changing the way they feel about government, those who manage it, and the services it provides. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard. Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, 2 p.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We're going to begin today's meeting by considering our consent agenda, and we do have agendas available there on the back tables by the two doors for anyone who would like to follow along. And so all items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. And so now I'll read the consent agenda items. First on page 2, item 3 is on consent. On page 3, items 4 and 5 are on consent. On page 4, items 6 through 9 are on consent. However, on item 9, all of the capitalized portion, which is the majority of the text, which is the recommendation, strike all of that, and the new recommendation will read, continue to Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 at 2 p.m. On page 5, all items 10 through 12 are on consent, but the same as I just said, essentially on the last one, strike the recommendation, and that will read continue to Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 at 2 p.m. Did I say something?
Mr. Chairman, that was just for item 12, correct?
Well, excuse me, that was just for item 12.
Okay.
Pardon me. And on page 6, all items 13 through 19 are all on consent. And on page 7, we have items 20 through 22 are on consent, and items 24 through 28. So item 23 is off consent on that page. Page 8, all items 29 through 35 are on consent. And finally, on page 9, all items 36 through 40 are on consent. And so I'll ask if there's any members of the public that would like to make any comments on the consent agenda. Questions or comments on any of the consent items? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board for...
Motion on consent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Sorry, Chairman, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Thank you.
The motion is approved. All 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Maggard.
Okay, that brings us back now to page 2 on our agenda. And this is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct the staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. So I'll ask if we have any public speakers. We ask that you observe our 2-minute time limit and please state your name. Come forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Maggard, Board of Supervisors. My name is Tom Pavich. I'm with the Election Integrity Project. I'm the Kern County Coordinator. We are a statewide, non-profit, nonpartisan organization, and we observe elections. At the last meeting, you had asked me to put into writing my presentation to the board, and I have done so. And hopefully you have copies at your desk. And just to summarize just quickly, first off, as I reported last week, Kern County's performance with provisional ballots and conditional voter registration, Kern County ranks last, or I should say first in terms of the number of provisional ballots. We have 4,170 provisional ballots, and as of June 16th, 22 Secretary of State update, that where there were a total of 13,381 ballots, provisional ballots cast in the entire state, Kern County has 31% of all of the provisional and conditional voter registration ballots in the entire state. So as I said in the last meeting, that's something that should possibly be looked at. I know the Registrar, Mary Bedard, said that we don't have the electronic poll book here in Kern County. Yes, that is an issue, but perhaps there are other reasons why our ranking is as high as it is. We're also one of the slowest. As of 10 days out, we had about 59,000 votes counted, or about 50% of the total votes cast. And both parties are frustrated at the process, and so we wish that the department could improve its performance in the future. I had mentioned that access to ballot processing was an issue for observers, and also a lack of real-time verbal communication was an issue for observers. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other members of the public that would like to make a public presentation? Okay, seeing none then, I'll move on to board member announcements or reports. Do we have any? Okay, seeing none then, that will bring us to the next item on our agenda, which is item number 23. And there are copies that are available. There's going to be an extensive PowerPoint presentation, but we did make some copies available on the back tables as well. And so if you'd like to follow along that way or take one home, they are available to you. And so this is an item that's under the County Administrative Office, and this is a presentation on community engagement efforts, identified community needs, and public service prioritization. And I'll turn to our CAO, Ryan Alsop. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the time today on this item. The goals of this effort were to better understand the needs within our community, to inform investment of limited discretionary revenues in vital county services, to make sure that we're aligned with and are driving strategic decisions for our annual budget process, and really at the end of the day to really guide and inform the county's long-term financial planning. Our engagement efforts are really around a couple of community-wide surveys that were conducted, the first of which was done in July of 2021, the second of which was done in May of 2022. That was just a few weeks ago. Along with a community-wide online feedback survey that the county has been hosting on our webpage, where we've been asking residents to visit and to complete the survey and to provide any feedback online. That was launched November 2021, and that process continues to the present day. And also, we're obviously informed through our regular budget process, meeting with individuals, residents, folks in our community about their needs. Just a couple of quick facts that I want to make sure that you're aware are entirely relevant to this presentation today. We all know that we're the third largest county by size, geographic area, the 11th largest by population in the state, but we're actually the 5th largest county by unincorporated area population, with a population of 557,000 unincorporated area residents. And I point that out because it's, again, important in the context of our presentation going forward. We also, another important context of the presentation you'll hear today, our county is the largest oil, 80% in the state, and natural gas, 78% in the state producer, which creates an economy and tax base which is unique from all other California counties. And now I'm going to ask Mr. Zerfus of my office to run through the next set of slides.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman and members of the board. I'm going to present some of the findings that we took away from the 2 community-wide needs surveys that were conducted over the past year. As Mr. Alsop had said, July of 21, we surveyed about 800 countywide residents. And then in May of 22, we surveyed about 1,000 respondents from across the county, including both incorporated city residents and unincorporated areas. These were done by phone and online, and both surveys were bilingual in English and Spanish. Some of the key takeaways here, and I've provided a red box around the
Excuse me, Mr. Zervis. Supervisor Perez has a question.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Jim. I thought we were the 9th largest in the state. This is 11th largest. Did that just shift with the census? We were in the top 10.
We're 11th.
Okay. Thanks.
So one of the big takeaways that we got primarily from both of these surveys, but this is specifically reporting on the latter survey just completed a few weeks ago, is that maintaining public safety, retaining and attracting local businesses and jobs, helping address mental health and addiction challenges, and repairing roads are considered among the most important measures. Like, that's the priorities that were set forth. And you can see that represented in the bar graphs, and specifically on the far right where we see the extremely or very important total, which just shows an intensity level for those specific items that our residents had said were important to them. And I would point out specifically the 61% extremely important result in maintaining medical emergency response and maintaining vital local services such as law enforcement, fire, and 911, and the total of 88 and 87. Again, these are countywide results. So we're hearing from both people living in incorporated cities and the unincorporated areas. So rounding out those above 80% categories, we see repairing roads, and then economic development, retaining and attracting local businesses and jobs, polled very highly amongst our residents, and those are areas that we continue to focus in as a county. On the next page, we see improving sheriff, fire, and 911 response. The difference here is the word improving versus maintaining. Residents were really concerned about further reductions in these vital services. But even this improving aspect, we see polling high at 78%. Just neck and neck with supporting veteran services, but as you can see by the 53% on extremely important measure with respect to improving sheriff, fire, and 911 response, there's a higher intensity level in supporting that, even though they both share the same overall score of 78%. We also see high levels of interest from our residents in helping address homelessness. So veteran services, helping address homelessness, maintaining anti-gang programs, preparing for natural disasters. And then again, we see economic development coming back up in attracting new industries and jobs with 74% very and extremely important. And then we get into some more quality of life types issues, code enforcement, cleaning up illegal trash in public areas, and illegal dumping. And the third page in these results, again, these are all carried a little less support than the first items we looked at, where we're up in the 80s and the 70s, but they're all definitely over a simple majority threshold of 50%. So these are items that were also prioritized by our residents, revitalizing rundown areas, enforcing cleanup and rundown abandoned buildings. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about that because some of these services overlap services that our local cities provide within their jurisdictions. So I think when you see some of the unincorporated responses in these areas, it'll add some context to that. So interest in code enforcement. We also see libraries and animal services ranking in the mid-50s, 56% on animal shelters and animal services, and libraries closer to 60. As mentioned, we conducted 2 surveys, and so it's interesting to look at the shift between 21 and 22. A lot's changed in the last year from just the situation with the pandemic itself, but also the war and the economy and a variety of other things that have changed within the last 10 months. So looking at how these numbers shifted a little bit, I pointed out in some of the red boxes here, some of the big shifts, where we see preventing thefts and property crimes increasing from 79% to 86%. So a pretty significant increase. Again, retaining and attracting local businesses and jobs, increasing from 74% into the 80s at 81%. So maintaining law enforcement, although there's not a huge shift in the overall extremely and very important category, we do see a 10-point shift, an increase in that extremely important category, moving up from 51% to 61%. So there were more people that told us that that was extremely important than when they were polled a year ago. Again, comparing some of the results from the 2 different community engagement surveys, we see a 7-point increase in helping address homelessness. I think that probably resonates with all of us just in spending time within our community. In other areas, all the numbers tended to shift up. So not exclusively, there were a few that dropped some points, but overall what we saw is a 1 to 2 point increase across the board, but a 7-point increase when it comes to addressing homelessness. And this next category of comparisons with respect to responding to natural disasters, we do see about a 3-point increase in that. Some of that depended on the wording of the question, but it did go up. Attracting new industries and jobs stayed the same. But the preserving library service hours and days, as well as the animal spaying and neutering programs, both saw a fairly significant increase in both intensity of the polling results and the overall vary in total importance. So although they're not in that top tier 80%, what we do see is that more people are saying that these are important services. Now, as Mr. Alsop mentioned, Kern County is home to just over 305,000 unincorporated residents. And that's important because those residents rely on the county to provide all local government services. All these vital services such as police, fire, 911 response, homelessness, roads, code compliance, land use, all of these services, they don't have a city that they live within that provides some of these services. So we did parse out our survey results by the unincorporated so that we could see what are those residents telling us are important to them, and how does that compare to what we've learned in the county-wide results. What we've seen is that although the priorities are very similar for both groups, the county-wide, or I should say the unincorporated residents, polled significantly higher, especially with regard to public safety. So we can see, the top line, maintaining vital local services such as law enforcement and 911 response, that county-wide had been at 87. We now see it up at 89, with 63% saying it's extremely important and another 26 saying it's very important. So we're seeing that the unincorporated residents are telling us with an even stronger voice that they're concerned about maintaining these local vital services. Maintaining medical emergency response, 1 point higher at 89 versus 88 for the countywide numbers. And that's pretty typical in what we're seeing throughout all of the public safety related items. Preventing thefts and property crimes, countywide it pulled at 86. That's up at 87. So again, a little more intensity there. Now, recruiting and retaining qualified sheriff's deputies, countywide that pulled at 79% versus 84 in the unincorporated counties. But these are the folks that don't have a local police department that's providing those emergency, those 911 responses with respect to public safety. So it makes sense that we would hear a stronger opinion when it comes to the actual, patrolling sheriff's deputies who are out providing frontline services. Recruiting and retaining qualified firefighters, 83 compared to 80 for the countywide number. And then attracting new industries and jobs actually came in at 79% compared to 74%. So again, we see more intensity in the desire for economic development within our unincorporated areas. Continuing to look at the unincorporated only needs, we see road repair is at 78, and that's compared to a countywide score of 80, so it's very similar, but actually down a couple points. Veteran services dropped a point to 77. The countywide number was 78, but all still polling very strongly. You can see in the countywide or in the unincorporated only needs survey, you see much more in the 70s and 80s, even the high 80s when you compare to the countywide residents. So. Helping address homelessness at 73, that's actually down from 77. So we saw in the unincorporated area, that's not as big a concern as when you bring in the incorporated cities, but still significant in the low 70s. And then cleaning up illegal dumping at 69%, and that compares to 72% for the total countywide numbers. So similarly to my comment with regards to the sheriff's deputies and being able to recruit and retain those and the impact of being within an incorporated city, we see a couple other of these categories, I think, with a similar influence. So for example, animal services. Cities provide animal control services also, so they're not seeing the same, maybe seeing the same degradation in services. Increasing animal spay and neuter programs. Countywide was at 56%, but we see 62% in our unincorporated areas because they don't have that other local government providing similar services. Enforcing and cleaning up rundown and abandoned buildings had a similar factor, so it's we are in at 59% there versus 66% in the total countywide survey results. And so that may be people within incorporated cities that see more of those types of issues and would like to see them dealt with, and maybe they don't understand that it's whether that's a county responsibility or a city responsibility. In addition to our two surveys, formal surveys, we did a county-wide online feedback form. We launched this in November 21. We basically took the information that we got from the first survey and wanted to know more about what people thought on these issues. So we put together an online form and solicited feedback. We have almost 900 respondents to that we've collected responses on. So we've got a pretty good response. And what you see in these bar charts is the lower ranking is actually stronger support. So we said, hey, vote if this is your number one priority, assign it a number 1, number 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so forth. So we see maintaining law enforcement, fire, and 911 response has an average score of 1.79. So that's significantly lower than even the second highest score, which is preventing property thefts and property crimes, which rated at 2.42. Closely followed by recruiting and retaining qualified firefighters and paramedics at 2.57, helping address mental health and addiction challenges, 2.82, and then providing supervision of high-risk offenders who are on probation at 2.86. This is another summary of that same information, just showing you how many number 1 scores were assigned to these different categories versus number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Takeaway still the same, maintaining law enforcement and public safety, preventing property crimes were received the highest ranks from the folks that completed our online survey. We did have some free-form response questions that allowed residents to just tell us other things that they were concerned about. This is a little small on the slide, and I apologize for that, but this is where we started to hear from the community with regard to priorities such as homelessness enforcement, more law enforcement, supporting outlying communities with sheriff, jail, fire, and paramedics, traffic and speeding, which we saw a big uptake to recently, particularly when the street racing and kind of intersection takeovers were going on. We saw those numbers spike. Litter and illegal dumping, graffiti, business and jobs, illegal marijuana, library hours, parks and recreation, election integrity, street and road improvements, code enforcement, animal services, and water. So these are items that were maybe a little more detailed than what we had specifically polled about, but we wanted to solicit feedback from all of our residents, and those were things that were being communicated to us. Pass.
Thank you, Mr. Zerfus. So one of the interesting things in the survey results that we found was that the county, your board, our departments, our business areas are fairly closely aligned with the priorities that have been expressed by our residents in a lot of the actions that we've been taking. What has been done? A lot of work around recruiting and retaining public safety professionals. We're expanding recruitment efforts for the sheriff. They're locally focused with target markets, revamped website, and a whole new campaign for hiring at the Sheriff's Department. We're aggressively targeting lateral transfers into the Sheriff's Office with bonuses, moving expenses, longevity matching. At the same time, reducing barriers to entry into employment with the county, not only at the Sheriff's Department, but the county in general, streamlining onboarding processes. We've increased sheriff, fire, probation compensation so that we are making sure that we are more competitive in the labor market, which is something that is an ongoing issue and should be considered an ongoing issue as we go forward in the years to come, keeping pace with the requirements of that market. And we've also offered, as you know, hiring incentives for sheriff's deputies. On addressing community needs and priorities, economic diversification has been a major priority for your board. These are identified through investments that we're making in initiatives like B3K, renewable energy, logistics, and becoming a national leader in carbon capture. Using one-time federal funding to expand homeless bed capacity with outreach and mental health support. We're reopening libraries across the county, making major park improvements, and attempting to address the digital divide in our community. We're using state and federal funding to add emergency shelter options and mental health assistance. Your board has initiated an anti-camping ordinance with an enforcement arm and plan around that new ordinance. And we're ramping up litter and illegal dumping cleanup, aggressively pursuing and receiving grant funding for parks, libraries, and other community needs. On achieving cost efficiencies, keep in mind, I've been here for 5 years. We've done some significant across-the-board budget reductions, making sure that we are aligned with existing revenues. It's been an exercise that we have all been involved with, all of our department heads have been involved with, and it's frankly been a grueling exercise, but necessary, and we've done that work. Lean Six Sigma projects continuing to be implemented across the county and county departments, making sure that we're optimizing the efficient use of funds for service delivery. We've reformed countywide compensation and the structure of how compensation is delivered for all of our employees. That was an accomplishment achieved with the help of our labor unions and done recently at the end of last year, positioning the county and your board so that we can not be in a situation that we found ourselves in, where we are able to provide somewhat more regular cost of living adjustments for our employees. Very, very significant reform led by your board. Your board back in '07.
Zach, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Ryan. I see here implemented fire department cost reductions, efficiency improvement per recommendations at the Center for Public Safety Management. Have we cut the firefighter budget?
No, we haven't cut the firefighter budget. Your board, there was a host, if you remember, the Center for Public Safety Management provided a fairly extensive audit to assist us through a financial emergency.
Ryan, did we cut the Kern County Sheriff's budget?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Thank you.
So your board back in '07 reformed employee pension benefits to the lowest illegally allowed pension benefit payout allowed by law in this state, the lowest of any other county that I know of, which is setting us on a course to address our unfunded pension liabilities within the next 12 years. You've done the work. Securing full cost recovery for contracts provided to our fire department by our contract cities. That work has been done. And there were 64 recommendations of the Center for Public Safety Management. Many of those have been addressed by our former fire chief and our current fire chief at the fire department. Those things have been done. They are ongoing. We're doing the work. But while we're doing the work, the county has challenges in meeting vital services, particularly in our unincorporated areas. Our county resources are extremely limited and hence limit our ability to make progress in meeting these needs while we live within our means. Sacramento regulations and unfunded mandates continue to cost the county millions of dollars, over $500 million, in fact, in the past 10 years alone, uniquely undercutting our county's ability to invest in vital services and control our own local fiscal future. And I'll speak about a little bit about that revenue loss in a minute. The county's $3.3 billion budget includes roughly $392 million in discretionary revenue, an amount that experienced significant reductions in prior recessions and has been largely stagnant for the past 7 years, with buying power being eroded due to inflation. County is in part currently relying on targeted one-time state and federal funding, which is not reliable or sustainable long-term or within our ability to locally control how that funding is spent. Pure discretionary revenue. So the chart you're seeing before you today shows our county's total general fund discretionary revenue from 2014 through 2021. You'll see that it's fairly stagnant. In fact, if you look closely, cumulatively, it's down 6% over the last 7 years. When adjusted for inflation, it's actually down 31% in real growth. It hovers around $400 million in any given year, up a little bit in 1 year, down a little bit in the next, but overall stagnant. The dark part of the bar represents property tax revenues. The orange part of the bar represents sales tax revenues. Property tax revenues make up nearly 75% of your board's total discretionary revenue that you're able to allocate and make decisions on to invest in things like public safety and other critical services. Sales tax revenue collections account for roughly 13 to 14% of our total discretionary revenue. So property tax and sales tax are a considerable portion of your board's discretionary revenue that you have available in any given year. This slide, while a little bit busy, shows you the cumulative change in assessed valuation, total assessed valuation in Kern County over the last 7 years. The middle line, which is the light green line, shows that our county's total assessed valuation, which is the value of all properties, whether they're located in unincorporated areas or in incorporated cities, whether they're houses or commercial businesses or oil and gas properties, have increased a total of 3.93% over the last 7 years. The orange bar at the top shows you the growth in assessed valuation of things like residential properties and certain other commercial properties. There's decent growth there. The bottom line, the dark line, shows you the growth over the last 7 years in the assessed valuation of oil and gas properties alone in Kern County. Over the last 7 years, the value of those properties has decreased by 64%. The decrease of 64% in just the oil and gas properties is effectively pulling down our overall growth year to year in the county's total assessed valuation. And again, Kern County is uniquely tied in a way that no other county is to the oil and gas industry. This slide shows you another format of what I just walked through. But I'll say that the very last bar shows 3.93% total growth over the last 7 years, and when adjusted for inflation, real growth, it's negative 23%. When you put a dollar value in money tracking the total assessed valuation and the negative growth in the total assessed valuation, just on the oil and gas properties alone here in Kern County, and you're using 2014 as a baseline, a year in which we collected $967,146 million in revenue just from the oil and gas industry. The following year, we lost 39 million. The next year in 2016, we lost 61 million. If you recall, that was the fiscal emergency. We were pumping oil, $100 a barrel. It tanked, went down to 35. That's what that's showing you. It ticks back up a bit as oil prices start to tick up slowly. The state comes in, announces a new regulatory framework for oil and gas properties. They're going to eliminate oil and gas entirely in 15 years. They're not permitting fracking. We're not moving permits. We're not drilling for more oil. And you see it flatten out and go negative. In 2021, we lost $66.8 million in revenue. Again, using 2014 as a baseline. When you add all that up, that's $379.9 million in discretionary revenue, property tax revenue, that we have not gotten. And again, that is a big number. I will tell you, I've talked to people in the oil industry, people that are very wise, that have been at it a long time. That number will go lower, or the loss will go higher, and the negative 64% will continue to go lower. When you look at Kern County growth in property tax values by jurisdiction, so growth in assessed valuation, which forms the foundation for property tax revenue collection, and growth in property tax revenue. When broken down, you'll see where that's going. If you see the bar at the far right end of that slide, that's the city of Shafter. You think about the wonderful company and all of their investment and development they're doing. You think about all the new houses that are going in Shafter along 7th Standard Road. It's a lot of development. That's that spike. But you see, most of this assessed valuation, most of the property tax revenue growth, the home sales, right? The new home building, the transactions in home sales, happening in incorporated cities, not county unincorporated areas. County unincorporated area, we're -7%, -7% in growth over the last 7 years. To put this in context and make some comparisons, again, 73% of our total discretionary locally controlled spending comes from property tax revenues. Over the last 7 years, 2014 to 2021, California counties have seen a 38% average increase in assessed property values. The 8 counties that share a border with Kern have seen an average 36% increase in assessed values since 2014. All the other Central Valley counties have increased an average of 45% since 2013. We are 3.9. Why? Because none of these other counties are tied into the oil and gas industry the way our county is. We are behind, we are last. We are number 58 of all 58 counties in growth in assessed valuation, again, due to our position on oil and gas. Often when we sit down with our labor friends, our employee bargaining groups, to talk about, to bargain over things like wages and other things that are needed in this county, we talk about counties of comparison. Hey, will you do this for us? Because look, these other counties of comparison are doing this, right? What I wanted to demonstrate here is look at the growth in assessed valuation in what are presented to me and my team as counties of comparison. Look at the growth in assessed valuation in those counties. Fresno, over 40%, LA, 42, Sacramento, 49, San Joaquin, 57, San Luis, 47, Santa Barbara, 39, Tulare, 38, Ventura, 29, Kern County, 3.9%. There's no comparison. It's apples and oranges. Why is that? Because none of these other counties, again, are producing 80% of the state's oil and 78% of the state's natural gas. None of these other counties are producing the amount of renewable energy that this county is, the amount of solar, where you have the solar tax exclusion, eliminating $20 million in revenue that we should be getting as a county for all of that. At the same time, consumer price index, 17% and growing. Increases in sales tax. Again, 13% of our discretionary revenue is made up of sales tax. This chart shows you where the growth in Kern County in sales tax collections is happening. It's happening in all the incorporated cities. In a slide later, I'll show you, I'll drill down on this a bit. Most folks are shopping for consumer goods in incorporated cities in our county, not in county unincorporated areas. We have grown by 19% over the last 7 years. All of our 7 neighboring counties have grown by 58% on average. To break this down a little bit, those of you who don't know, I know board members you do, but for members of the audience, the state sales tax rate is 7.25%. Local governments, cities, and counties get back a percentage of that. In fact, it's a percentage and a quarter, 1.25%. A percentage of that is sent back. 25 cents is spent on transportation-related investments that's distributed throughout the state. Of that 1%, just Bradley Burns, 1%, California counties have seen an average of 66.3% increase in growth of their 1% Bradley Burns over the last 7 years. The 8 counties that share a border with Kern have seen an average increase of 57.4% in sales tax collection over that same period. We are the 6th lowest in sales tax collection growth of all the counties over the last 7 years, even though we're the 3rd largest by size and the 11th largest by population, and we have top 5 unincorporated areas by population. Again, applying the same principle of counties of comparison that are that we generally, or at least our bargaining units, compare themselves to. Look at the growth in just the 1% Bradley Burns sales tax receipts in these counties. Fresno, 89% growth in the last 7 years. LA, 35, Sacramento, 99, San Joaquin, 166%, San Luis Obispo County, 18. They're about where we are, but they've got great assessed valuation growth. Santa Barbara, 54, Tulare, 78, Ventura, 67, we're 19. I also point out that that is just in the 1% Bradley Burns. Many of these counties have taken it upon themselves to apply a locally dedicated sales tax measure on top of the 7.25% and the 1% that they get back. LA's increased it by $3 for various things. Sacramento is a half cent, San Joaquin a half cent, but look at their growth. Look at their growth in just Bradley Burns. Look at their assessed valuation growth. They're bringing in a lot of discretionary revenue. San Luis Obispo County, yeah, they have 7.25%, but look at their assessed valuation. Yeah, Ventura County, they're at 7.25%, but look at their growth in Bradley Burns, 67.6% over 7 years. They've also they've seen a 30% increase in assessed valuation. They don't need it. They don't need to do any increase. Again, we're 19%. We have no locally dedicated sales tax. CPI up 17% over that period of time. This chart, while a little busy, shows you where what our sales tax collection sources are. And we have represented this to you in a comparison with the city of Bakersfield to make it simple. The third grouping of bars over with the first circle, that shows you where the blue bars are county, the yellow bars are city. This shows you where we're collecting the vast majority of our sales tax, or our sales tax revenue, which is from the oil and gas industry, the business to business transactions in the oil and gas industry. Ag's in there too. But if you go over to the second bar with the second circle, it shows you where our second biggest collection of property tax revenues. These are from fuel and service stations, compared to the 7% in just the city of Bakersfield. These are the big travel plazas around the county. Interstate 5, right? 99, 58. These places that see a lot of folks that are traveling through our area, most of who aren't even living here, who are filling up their tanks with gas, buying things, etc. Those are the counties, the county unincorporated's 2 biggest resources for our sales tax collection. The third circle over shows you, it demonstrates with the yellow bar representing the city that residents are generally shopping in cities for consumer goods. They are not shopping in the unincorporated county areas. Again, county sales tax is mostly collected in the travel and business-to-business sectors. This next slide shows you that 50 of the 58 counties, 34 or 58.6% of them have some type, they've taken the initiative and have some type of locally dedicated sales tax in place for certain purposes. This slide shows you of all the cities in California, there's 482 of them, 444, 92%, have some type of a locally dedicated sales tax on top of the Bradley Burns, on top of the 7 1/4 base that's applied. They've made a determination that what they're getting at some point throughout history is what they're getting out of the 7 1/4 for whatever reason hasn't been sufficient enough to meet needs and to take local control of their financial future. This next slide, a little busy, but the takeaway here is that 95% of this state's population, of the people in this state, are residing in areas that have done a locally dedicated sales tax measure that is spent on providing things like public safety services and other vital services to residents. 5.9% of the state's population are outliers, essentially, based on the numbers, living in an area or a jurisdiction with just the base 7 1/4. These are typically smaller counties, smaller cities. But the vast majority of the state's population is living in an area that has taken it upon themselves to apply a locally dedicated measure. This slide, there's a lot of data, but the takeaway is these are the 20 most populated counties in the state. We're number 11. We're 5th largest in unincorporated area. We're running a big city, in addition to all the other county-wide services that are provided to incorporated cities within the county. Of all the top 20 most populated counties, only Kern and Ventura have not done throughout their history, and we've been here for 160 years almost, I believe, a locally dedicated measure. Now, I will argue Ventura County doesn't need to. They've got great growth in their assessed valuation. They're over on the coast. Homes are $1 million. They got a lot of development over there, and yeah, there's some oil and gas over there, but we dwarf it by a lot, so they don't need it, but it shows you that we are in the minority of California counties, at least the top 20. And now back to Mr. Zerfus.
Thank you. I want to share with you, board and public, some of the public's understanding of these fiscal challenges, because what we've learned in our survey work and our data gathering is people inherently understand this. That's the results from the survey. This is some anecdotal just headlines that I grabbed from recent articles. KGET is here. Grand jury report, raise sales tax, update KCSO software, fill vacant positions. Channel 23, lack of funding, hiring shortages, restricts Kern County library system from increasing hour of operation. And then Robert Price's article in the Californian calling Kern County to increase sales tax by a penny. Just some of the public headlines that have been out there in the media recently. These are all recent articles. But we polled this question. We asked residents in the county-wide area and the unincorporated area, hey, do you understand the fiscal challenges? Do you think Kern County needs more funding in order to provide these services, these vital services? And overwhelmingly, the response was yes. So you can see 74% and this has even gotten stronger. So 74% in July of 21 responded that there was some or great need within Kern County for additional funding. That number went up 4 points to 78% when we updated our survey results in May. And when you add in the total or a little need category, so all of the yeses basically, that number goes from 82% to 85%. So there's definitely an understanding from the community, from the respondents to our survey that funding challenges impact Kern County and our ability to meet these needs. We asked the unincorporated residents separately and parsed that data out to see if they understand these fiscal challenges, and it's almost the same number. So now we see 79% with great or some need. That's a little stronger than the 78% that we saw in May of June for countywide residents. But overall, it's that same 85%. So what we've been sharing with you today hasn't gone unnoticed by our community. There's definitely an understanding in the public that Kern County has funding challenges, and they understand it. We followed up that question with asking our unincorporated residents if they're interested in helping us address these fiscal challenges. And after some education and understanding the fiscal challenges that we face, 64% of surveys respondents are interested in a potential unincorporated only funding measure with a simple majority threshold. And so you can see definitely yes at 40%, probably yes another 19%. Total yes, 64%. So 85% of the public recognizes that there's a need for additional funding. And here, when asked this question, 64% said they were interested in considering a measure to help address those fiscal challenges. Yes, this was in May of 22. So the most recent survey data. So what might a potential funding measure look like? It's a measure to meet the residents' priorities with funding that cannot be taken by the state, law enforcement, 911 response, fire, property crimes, mental health, homelessness, roads, jobs, etc. All the things that we saw in the survey data. 100% of these funds stay local. 1% of sales collected in unincorporated areas only. Those are primarily those business-to-business transactions and travel plazas that Mr. Alsop referred to when analyzing the source of our sales tax revenue. A measure voted on only by unincorporated voters, used to fund services in unincorporated areas, with required public spending disclosures to ensure transparency, citizens' oversight, and audits.
Members of the board, Kern County provides frontline public safety and other critical services for over 300,000 residents living in the state's fifth largest county unincorporated area. The tax base of our unincorporated area is uniquely tied to the oil and gas industry in a way that no other county in the state is. This unique position is directly affecting local tax revenue growth, where our county's resources are extremely limited, which in turn limits our ability to make value-added progress in meeting community needs. Quite simply, we are living within our means. As has been identified through two extensive community surveys conducted in July of 2021 and May of 2022, again, May of 2022 was just a few weeks ago, county unincorporated residents overwhelmingly have voiced a number of priorities with a main focus on public safety, crime reduction, addressing the impacts of homelessness, mental health, and job creation. In fact, we've seen the number of those surveyed who deem these priorities as extremely important increase from the first survey conducted in July of last year to the most recent survey conducted again just a few weeks ago. Importantly, your board is aligned with and acting on these priorities while living within our means, aggressively pursuing outside investments, actively working to make the county more efficient, and prudently allocating limited taxpayer resources. Crime is on the rise, and with it, a call for maintaining strong, vital local services such as law enforcement, fire, and 911 response, and better prevention of thefts and property-related crime. Homelessness and the impacts on our community from homelessness is on the rise, and with it, a demand for addressing mental health and addiction challenges. Our oil and gas industry and all that it provides this community is being regulated into extinction, and with it, a demand for economic diversification and job creation. Sacramento regulations and unfunded mandates continue to cost the county uniquely millions of dollars over $500 million, as I pointed out, in the past 10 years. Again, uniquely undercutting our county's ability to invest in vital services for our unincorporated area residents, including public safety, and for greater local control of our fiscal future. The county is, in part, as I've stated, relying on targeted one-time state and federal funding, which is not reliable or sustainable, nor within our local control and your board's discretion, ultimate discretion. A vast majority of those surveyed over the last year agree that the county is in need of additional funding. A majority of those surveyed over this past year have told us that they would support a ballot measure to address their priorities. For these reasons, and in line with what you've been presented this afternoon, it is my office's recommendation that you instruct me today, working with our county council, to bring back before your board for the Tuesday, June 28th Board of Supervisors meeting, your consideration of a proposed ballot measure for a locally dedicated 1-cent sales tax increase to be voted on this November by unincorporated area residents only, that is collected in unincorporated areas only, and is inclusive of a citizens advisory committee that would assist both our county and the public with full transparency on how these funds are allocated. That ends our presentation, and Mr. Zerfus and I are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop and Mr. Zervis. Appreciate your presentation. I'll ask if there's any questions from members of the board before I go to the public. Okay, seeing none, we'll open it up now to members of the audience. Would anyone like to ask any questions or speak on this issue? You'll have 2 minutes.
Not all at once, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Cynthia Zimmer. I'm Kern County's district attorney. I am the county's chief public safety official. It is my job and the job of those who work for me to keep the community safe, to stand up for victims' rights, and to seek justice for all. It is imperative that my office has the ability to recruit and retain staff, particularly lawyers, who require specialized education and training so we can do the vital work that this community deserves. Kern County law enforcement is facing unprecedented challenges, and that applies to the district attorney's office. Changes in state laws have had a terrible impact on public safety. Crime, law enforcement arrests, and prosecutors' caseloads are increasing. Because of certain crimes or certain laws like AB 109, Proposition 47, and Proposition 57, more criminals are back on the streets committing new crimes in record time. Take, for an example, one crime that we prosecute. That's a violation of Penal Code Section 29800. That's a felon who is in possession of a firearm. In 2018, we filed 498 of those cases. 3 years later, in 2021, we filed 795 cases of felons with firearms. Changes in policing, even positive ones, have created a severe impact on our office, requiring more staff, body-worn cameras. We have to take tremendous time to download those body-worn cameras, review the footage, and prepare transcripts for court. But the prosecution of crime that occurs in outlying areas in unincorporated Kern is a priority for the district attorney's office. Crime victims in rural Kern should receive the same protections and rights as those in Bakersfield. This has to be the case. Regional courts where DA's offices are located are very, very busy. Mojave is our busiest court. We hear crimes out there that occur in California City, Boron, Mojave, Rosamond, and Tehachapi. We have very unique challenges in crime and in law enforcement in those rural communities. But I want you to know, and I'm sorry I'm going over my time, but if you can indulge me just a few more seconds, Kern County's law enforcement dollars, I will tell you at this time, are very well spent. We receive, I believe the community receives very high level of service for their money, but right now we are stretched so thin. During the pandemic, Kern County courts stayed open. We shut down for a couple of months, but we stayed open, and we tried in 2020 more felony jury trials than counties 10 times our size. As a matter of fact, we tried more felony jury trials in 2020 in Kern County than any other jurisdiction in California. Attorneys are handling huge caseloads, and I will tell you this is a tremendous source of stress for prosecutors especially, because we do not want to make a mistake because there are such consequences. Mr. Alsop mentioned Ventura County. Let me tell you about a comparison in our office and the DA's office in Ventura County. We're about the same size. Ventura has 840,000 people. We have 919,000 people. Ventura has 105 prosecutors. We have 75. Ventura in 2020 had 20 homicides. We had 116. So they have more prosecutors and less crime, and they're paid a lot more money. We are running thin now. We have less prosecutors now than we had in 2016. We had 97 of them in 2016. Today we have 75. So we heard a very, very compelling presentation by the CAO's Office of the State of the County Revenues, including public support for public safety. And I strongly urge this board to consider what you've heard this afternoon and send this question to voters this November for them to decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'll be next, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Under Sheriff Doug Yock, and the sheriff asked me to be here to speak on behalf of the sheriff's office today because he's at a state sheriff's conference. We do not think it comes as a surprise to anyone that violent crimes, property crimes, quality of life crimes are on the rise in our county, state, and across this nation. All in a time when law enforcement agencies across this state and nation are experiencing shortages of law enforcement officers. The Sheriff's Office is not exempt from this crisis and is experiencing unprecedented recruitment retention issues in all sworn and unsworn positions. For as long as we can remember, but specifically starting in fiscal year 16-17, which was the beginning of the county's 4-year mitigation plan, the Sheriff's Office and other county departments were forced to reduce staffing or reduce services to meet budget constraints. Since fiscal year 17-18, the Sheriff's Office has unfunded positions to meet budget by an average of $14.3 million per year. Fiscal year 2022-2023 will be no different. To meet budget guideline, the Sheriff's Office will need to unfund 131 sworn and 10 non-sworn positions, which equates to approximately $14.1 million in budget savings. The Sheriff's Office currently has 125 vacant deputy positions, 122 vacant detention deputy positions, and 111 vacant non-sworn positions. And these numbers are growing on a weekly basis. Our employees work extremely hard to protect our communities and have a tremendous personal sacrifice to help mitigate the staffing shortages by working either extended shifts or working overtime when they're assigned days off. Employees want and deserve a home work-life balance. And unfortunately, at this time, we just cannot provide it because of our staffing shortages. The sheriff is mandated to provide jails, court services, and civil. These mandates mean most of our cuts come from specialized functions like our former gang unit, depleted narcotics units, rural crimes unit, detective units, and patrol across our counties. Detentions is not exempt from these cuts. We currently have 2 empty jail facilities simply because we do not have enough detention staff to open them. This requires jail staff to release criminals back into our communities daily due to lack of bed space. Employee exit interviews routinely list staffing shortages, unsafe working conditions due to staffing shortages, and low pay as reasons for leaving our organization. With additional staff leaving and not being able to backfill them, we have a self-fulfilling prophecy which will lead to more staff leaving for other employment opportunities that offer better work, home life balance, and pay. This will continue to lead to more reduced services, increased crime, and more criminals on our streets with fewer deputies in our communities. The monitors of the stipulated agreement between the county and DOJ and the recent grand jury report both pointed out to properly fund and staff the Kern County Sheriff's Office. The first annual monitor's report stated in part, the county policymakers, KCSO, and community must come together to develop realistic solutions or to adjust the expectations of what services the Sheriff's Office can provide. We appreciate the efforts of your board, the CAO's office, and our staff have put into trying to help the sheriff address these critical staffing issues. However, even with added efforts, the Sheriff's Office had a net loss of 29 sworn and 16 non-sworn staff in fiscal year 2021, and to date, the Sheriff's Office has a net loss of 25 sworn and 17 non-sworn staff in fiscal year 21-22. This continuous loss of staff forces us to further reduce services throughout our communities. Unfortunately, we are forecasting an even larger number of employees than usual will be leaving the Sheriff's Office over the next several years due to retirement, other law enforcement careers within our county and state, and we are now seeing staff deciding to leave law enforcement altogether or to leave to other states, due in large part to the policies of California. The sheriff does not support higher taxes, but if the voters don't get an opportunity to vote on this measure, we do not know what Plan B will be other than for our organization to continue getting smaller, which will lead to more reduced services, increased crime, and lower quality of life for our communities. We either need to become competitive in our recruiting and retention efforts to build our organization back to what it once was, and an organization where people want to come and stay for the entirety of their career. We would respectfully ask that your board allow the voters to make their voices heard about the quality and level of services that can be provided by our county and the Kern County Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Scribner, supervisors. My name is Raji Brar. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Countryside Market and Restaurants. We're a family-run business. We've been in Kern County for over 30 years. We have fueling stations, we have fast food restaurants, and 90% of our businesses are in the unincorporated area of Kern County. We have 500 employees, and I would venture to say 98% of those employees are in the unincorporated areas of Kern County. And we are here today to tell you a little story about ourselves. Growing up, my brother and I worked in our stores. Every summers, we'd work, 13, 14 years old. I have 13 and 14-year-olds. They will not be working in my stores this summer. The crime and the safety at our stores is not what it was when we first started. We spend millions of dollars on our businesses, but we feel very unsafe for ourselves and for our employees. Theft is something that happens daily. Crime is something we deal with daily. And when we call the Sheriff's Department, we are told there's not enough deputies and the wait times. As you've heard today, what you are hearing is true. I can tell you that. This is what we're dealing with. There are times when we think about hiring private security, but even then, what does that entail? So our concern is that we want to ensure that our businesses can keep thriving. We want to keep our employees safe. People send their children to work for us. It's their first-time jobs. They're 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and they're frightened because people come rush the store and grab things and run out. Then there's folks that come in who have mental health issues. Homeless is an issue. They're in our trash cans, and this is the conversations we have daily. Our operations meetings now consist of how do we deal with the homeless crisis at our stores. So this is something that was not on our radar even 5-6 years ago, but it's definitely on our radar now. And as you heard the undersheriff mention, that nobody wants higher taxes. Trust me, nobody wants higher taxes. We pay a lot of sales tax. We pay a lot of tax. But there comes a time when we need a solution. And right now we are asking for a solution because we need help. And I would encourage the board to let the voters decide what that looks like. But I can tell you from our experience, what we are dealing with is really frightening, and we feel very unsafe. Not only is our businesses in the county of Kern, but also our residences. We all live out in the country. And I can tell you, we're very aware of what's happening to the Sheriff's Department. And I think that has to change. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you all please consider what Mr. Alsop has presented to you, and let's dig deeper and let's find a solution. We got to keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tim Coffrin. I'm the president of Kern Law Enforcement Association. I represent what should be about 550 deputy sheriffs and district attorney investigators. That number currently is about 430. As the sheriff alluded to, we're about 125 deputies short. I stand here today speaking before you, a very proud member, 23-year member of the Sheriff's Office. I've been here for quite a while. I've had a lot of great assignments, great opportunities. I've seen this department at its zenith, at the top when we were able to attract and hire people from other places and provide top quality law enforcement services to our community. I'm also standing here somewhat frustrated and disappointed because I also know what the current state of our public safety capabilities are that we provide to the community today. Excuse me, I lost my spot here. From the presentation that you heard today, Kaylee is very supportive of anything, any solutions, any ideas that can bring more funding and means to the Kern County Sheriff's Office so we can attract and bring in new employees and start to rebuild our department. We recognize the significant impact the Bakersfield City sales tax has had on the Bakersfield Police Department. The city's increased revenue has given them the resources and funding needed to attract and hire new staffing as they work towards significantly expanding the size of their department and ability to provide the vital services to their community. As a factor in our inability to remain competitive, even with BPD, we believe a properly managed and focused unincorporated sales tax would help bring those resources to the county and begin the process of rebuilding our department. I too recognize the conservative nature of our community, and like most, I'm generally not in support of new taxes or increased taxes. However, I've very recently been assigned to some of our outlying communities, probably some that the last speaker spoke of, that have received the main impact of our current staffing shortages. Areas where substations have been closed, only to be reopened on a part-time basis. All due to staffing levels. Or areas that require a 30 to 40 minute response for backup to back up a deputy who's working in an area all alone. It's very frustrating responding to these calls for service where victims of crime are more impacted that they cannot get a timely response from law enforcement than they are by the fact that they were a victim of a crime. We hear that every day. I've heard on a daily basis from these frustrated community members that something must be done. Kaylee agrees with the community. Something must be done, and it must be done soon. All of our communities deserve 24/7 public safety coverage. All my members deserve the resources necessary to prevent a night shift deputy from having to cover a high crime community alone on a weekend and worry about his distant backup arriving in time to avoid a disaster. We're not asking the board to adopt the sales tax. We're just merely asking that you put it on the ballot and let the members of the community choose for themselves. Give them the ability to decide if that's the right solution, and if they're willing to take the brunt of that. With that, I and Kaylee ask you that you provide necessary direction to staff, and that results in the placing of the sales tax question on the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Lauren Skidmore. I'm a resident of unincorporated Kern County, 5th generation resident. And I actually wasn't planning on speaking today. I was really just here to educate myself and be a part of the discussion, but I found it relevant to share that, my family and we've probably voted down every bond measure that's come across our board. Any property tax conversation, we're the first one to tell you no. But in 2015, I was actually part of a coalition that came to your board and asked for you all to bring in some cost-saving reductions, Lean Six Sigma, and you did it. In 2019, I was a part of a conversation with other elected officials talking about how homelessness was on the rise and asked the County of Kern to step up and provide homeless services, and you did it. And so I just wanted to share today that I think You all are stepping up to all of the challenges, and so I would hope that the residents of Kern County can see that there is an amazing group of individuals innovating and providing cost-saving, effective measures across the board, not just in our local government, but also, in other areas. And it's time for the residents to have a say in what their future looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dave Nelson, President of the Kern County Firefighters Association, representing nearly 500 members of the Kern County Fire Department and protecting 8,100 square miles. I want to begin with thanking the CEO's office for their leadership and efforts that they've placed into bringing a good product for something that typically an anti-tax association is willing to stand behind and support. The community outreach, the way you've engaged and interacted with the community is of value. It paints a very clear picture on the needs, and it also reinforces some of the things that we're feeling on the public safety side. I'm the middleman in this situation. I'm either waiting for an ambulance or I'm waiting for a sheriff's officer. So we need to do something to address those issues. I will say, though, that I am very active on the legislative side in Sacramento related to our energy industry, and we are under a stranglehold of legislation that is not going to go away. The $66 million in loss from last year is an unknown number in the following years. It can be $100 million, or it can be completely wiped out. We are on a trajectory to lose a significant amount of revenue that is sustainable through legislation. An example of that is the continued stranglehold of business that's done in our backyard by Sacramento, the solar tax exclusion. Major losses of money each year, year over year. So I'm here to ask for your support in pursuing a measure that may improve the services that we're able to provide to the county. Maintaining those services is one. Being a resident with family who live in unincorporated areas, we feel the pinch through the lack of law enforcement. And I can tell you my personal experience is what I'm going to pay in sales tax on a vehicle doesn't make up for that vehicle being stolen. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Who'll be next, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Turnip seat. I represent the Kern County Taxpayers Association. One thing I've learned in 17 years is when people before you cover the topics like Raji Brar and Lauren Skidmore did today, it takes away most of what I'm going to say, so I'll make it short and sweet. As Mr. Nelson just said, there are regulatory challenges that aren't even being talked about yet. And one of that isn't from Sacramento, it's from like the SEC, because oil companies have a lot of reserves on their balance sheet that they cannot access. And by law, if they don't develop those reserves, they have to take them off the rolls. And as you know, I have relationships in the oil industry, and that could be 25% of the oil tax roll that we're not even talking about yet. And it's going to happen because the oil companies are making plans for that because they have to. And it's not Sacramento, it's the Securities and Exchange Commission. But then the assessor will have no, you can't do anything, but if they take it off the roll, it goes off the roll. Mr. Couch, you're a stockbroker. Mr. Maggard, I was going to ask him as an accountant about when you write off assets, you write off assets. They're just what they are is what they are. So Kern Tax feels that this affects the quality of life for everyone who lives in the county, but especially those in the unincorporated areas. And you need to give them ask them, what kind of government do you want? Because the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. And nobody likes to pay more than they have to, but we are on a path. There's nothing that the staff can do. There's nothing really you can do on this path except let people decide their own destiny. So please consider letting the citizens, through their right to vote, which is our most cherished American thing we have in America, is the right to vote, let them determine their destiny by voting on this in November. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please?
Good
Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Lorelei Oviatt, your Director of Planning and Natural Resources. So you've heard today from this extensive presentation this picture of where we're at. I believe there may be people in the public who are saying, well, you should all get to work. You should get more industries. You should get more revenue. So we have. So it took us 15 years, over the last 15 years, to build for the state of California 18,000 megawatts of wind and solar. And between that wind and solar and the oil, we were able in 2008 to 2010 to survive the recession. I wouldn't say we thrived, but we survived. But that was 15 years. I am here to tell you that your board has directed, and we are working with many different industries, to create a carbon management center here. We have the most biofuel, we have all the solar, we have all the wind, we have oil, and yet we are still, because of policies of the state of California and the way that tax structures are created, struggling. So our plans to be a carbon management will work. But we need to stabilize our general fund because we cannot get investors to invest in Kern County when we have the kind of crime and the kind of challenges that you've heard from Ms. Zimmer and from the sheriff and from the CAO. We will not get the green investors here who will worry about the stability. And we need self-determination. I support this both as a professional, as a department head, and also as a citizen who lives in the unincorporated area of Eastern Kern and daily experiences these types of challenges. I support this idea of self-determination. We need to stabilize our general fund over the next 4 to 6 years to allow for the reinvention of our oil companies, and they are reinventing ourselves, the carbon capture, which we will get revenue from, and the attraction of these new industries. And the state of California has made many promises to the CAO about how we're going to help you. To date, we have not seen that help. We need self-determination, and we need to stabilize our general fund so that investors see that this is a place. We attracted $68 billion with a B of private investment money over the last 15 years for wind and solar. Given the projections on carbon capture and carbon management, we could attract $100 billion, but we won't if we don't have the basic services and the basic feeling of safety inside our communities. So I ask that your board place this sales tax measure on the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers, please? Okay, I don't see any, so I'll return to the board. Supervisor Perez is already punched in, so Supervisor Perez.
Chairman, thank you so much. Lorelei, you missed it. Most importantly, we have you. And a brilliant, genius CAO team that I'm just so incredibly grateful for. I would really like to thank our staff wholeheartedly and deeply for the presentation today. What we've heard is informative, extraordinary, and very, very helpful. I also want to thank our residents who have participated in the survey process, who have come down here today. We hear you, I promise. To see Raji and Lauren and Mike T. What an incredible coalition of thinkers, of thought leaders, and frankly, future leaders, current and future leaders of this community. I am very pleased that the work of this board, our administration, and the county departments, by all accounts, seems to be very closely aligned with what we're hearing from the public. Jim, thank you for your presentation. It was thorough and just excellent, as I expect you to be. It is clear that public safety services in this community are the priority. And I'll say, as long as I've been in this business 20 years, it has always been that way. There are blurps in polling when you see issues come and rise in the body politic, but public safety is always number one. Homelessness, huge issue. We know this. And working in more collaborative ways than we have ever done. Ryan, with our center with looking at the 3 Ps of pets, property, right? And just re-envisioning how it is we honestly meet the community where they are and solve our problems. As you heard today, we are living within our means. The issue, of course, is our means. How many do we have and how can we grow it, Kathy? You know. Keeping pace to ensure that our services receive the kind of supportive, ongoing funding that requires is really the issue, not one that we can ignore at all anymore. Revenue growth is a real problem here, and it is clear that our county is in a position that most other counties are not. Primarily, the way our county is directly tied to this state's energy future. We are its present, we are its future, we are the only hope. Our leading position as an energy leader, whether oil and gas, renewables, wind and solar, are unique to all other counties. We do feed and fuel the world. We are exceptional in these industries, absolutely unparalleled. Given this unique position, current state policy directives and regulations are not without consequence. In our county's case, as it turns out, profound, great, and often tragic consequence. As was pointed out, Kern County has lost $500 million in local tax revenue over the last decade. My God. The goal of diversifying our regional economy is a critical one. We must. However, the prospect of doing enough of what needs to get done in the time it needs to get done in is just not feasible. I believe something more needs to be done. We need to take greater local control over our financial future. We've heard from our county's residents over the past year, and by all accounts, they too believe the same. Importantly, our sheriff, our district attorney, our firefighters, our sheriff's deputies, and the Kern County Taxpayer Association believe that we need to as well. At this time, I would like to make a referral to staff, and I want to thank you again for your hard work, for your polling, for your honest questions to the public to see where they are, because it is their government, and I really appreciate the time spent to ask our people where they are. Thank you. Here's my referral, Ryan. Can you please bring back a drafted proposed ballot measure next week, Tuesday, June 28, for this board to consider sending a question to unincorporated area voters only this November on a general purpose majority vote 1 cent sales tax measure, voted on by unincorporated area voters only and collected only in unincorporated areas, with a provision for a Citizens Oversight Commission for full transparency on how the funding will be spent. I want to again thank my colleagues for keeping an open mind, for the public for looking honestly at our situation and saying, how can we best direct our future ourselves without the blame game that isn't solving our problems. We need to take action, and we need to take action now. I submit that very humbly to my colleagues. I know these are hard issues, but essentially this community seems unified to me that we need to move forward and take action and keep the future of this county within our purview, within our resources, within our ingenuity, because we have all the experts, we have the answers. We need to close the gap and allow ourselves to become what we already are, the energy experts of the world. We need to pronounce this prowess to the globe and build out what will be one of the wealthiest counties in America, I'm sure of it. This is a critical time. Beg my colleagues to please step up and help this community reach our goals of a rising tide lifting all boats. Thank you. God bless Kern County, and I think we're going to do this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Peters?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Alsop, I got a few questions. I don't know if you'll have answers for them right now, or this might be something you need to bring back, but one of the things that I keep hearing is the issues that we're dealing with right now being caused by the state. And a lot of the regulations coming down that are handcuffing our different departments. Now, I agree wholeheartedly that public safety is priority one. I want as many deputies, firefighters, prosecutors, probation officers as we can out on the street, out in our communities, keeping us safe. I want them to have all the tools that they need to accomplish their mission and safely as they can. But the state keeps putting regulations on us that make it harder, not only for us, but also harder for them. Some of the propositions, the assembly bills, make it hard to prosecute people, make it hard to arrest people. Just constant stream of issues coming out of the state. And then, as was mentioned, not issuing permits for oil, the oil industry, not allowing us to make any revenue with solar exclusion. All of that considered, it comes to a point where it almost seems like we're, how can I say this the right way? I don't want to ask any residents in California or in Kern County to subsidize bad legislation coming out of Sacramento. And I'm not saying that's what this would be, but what I'm saying is I want us, before we go and ask the voters for that help, to step up and help us get through this, because we do have to contend with the realities of our situation. But I want to know, and I want to be able to show the public what the county as a whole is doing to push back on these. I know some of our departments, some of our unions, Mr. Nelson was a great example, have been engaged in Sacramento on pushing back on this, but I don't think that's true in all of our departments. And I really want to make sure that all of our county employees, the public in general, knows how the bread gets buttered here. And that's with oil, that's with ag. I want them to understand the challenges we're having and be able to push back on Sacramento and engage at that level. So I would like to, be it next week, be it at some point in the future going forward, I want to develop some kind of strategy, some type of action plan for all of our departments that shows how they're engaging and how they're advocating for this, because we need all the help advocating for Kern County as we can get if we're gonna keep advocating for our departments. So that's kind of the main point that was coming to me in talking about all the issues with the state of California. Secondly was Lean Six Sigma. And I know that we've had that as an ongoing project for quite a while now. I don't know if we had any of the numbers in here or an updated list of the man hours saved, the amount of the dollars saved over the last few years that this has been implemented. But if we could hear back on that as well, I think that would help demonstrate that we're trying to be as sound a taxpayer advocates and stewards of those dollars as possible. This is not something being taken lightly. And so if we can get some of that information whenever this comes back to the board, it would be appreciated. And I think that's all I have for questions right now, but I definitely understand the need, and I definitely want to do whatever we can to help support our public safety and our county. So thank you for everybody that was willing to take the time to come down here and speak and share your thoughts. And
is that a second, Peters?
Much appreciated. Well, possibly. I'd like to hear if any of the other supervisors have any thoughts.
Thank you, Supervisor Peters. Supervisor Couch, do you have any comments?
I have a concern, and it's along the lines of what Supervisor Peters said. And it's this: if we don't make inroads or get the state to turn around, repeal Prop 47, 57, repeal those things that are creating so much of the, not creating the crime, but it's putting the same people that commit the crime back out on the street. I have a fear that there won't be enough people around, or if we have the governor and the state that continue to attack the oil industry, the question comes to my mind is who's going to stick around and be around to pay the tax? Now I'm going to support it coming back in a week, but that's what I really do support what Philip is saying, Supervisor Peters. Sorry to be so familiar with you there. But the way the state is headed, and unfortunately we're just a victim of that, in my opinion, is and has been troublesome for me for a long, long time. Thank you.
But that is not a second to the motion? No? Okay, so no seconds yet. Okay, so I'll go ahead and speak. Yeah, I also want to thank our staff that put so much time and effort into that presentation, but also into conducting the research, collecting the data. There's a lot of compelling information in there. Essentially what you're seeing is that I think that the priorities that the board has identified and have been doing so much within our means to address are the same things that the public is concerned about. So I think that shows that we're listening to our constituents and that our staff is listening to our constituents. So I think that's very heartening. Public safety has been this board's priority for as long as I've been here, and I know it's been much longer than that. But public safety clearly has been under considerable stress, and so much of that is the recent changes in state policy. Fairly recently, you have propositions that have just been put in place. 47, for instance, I believe that was voted on in 2014, went into place fairly recently, and over time, you've seen that erode our neighborhoods and our businesses because crimes that used to be prosecuted are no longer being prosecuted. And so you have essentially an ability for people to continue to victimize our friends and our neighbors and our families without any real consequences. In efforts to clear out our jails, the state has instead put those folks back on our streets for us to deal with time and time and time and time again. It is obvious that we're in a non-competitive position with other counties, especially counties that we use as comparisons when we're talking to our labor groups or we're talking to the public and trying to explain to them, these are the counties that we compare ourselves to, and most of those counties, with the exception of Ventura, have a much higher sales tax than us, and so. I think of my residents in Rosamond, and their biggest concern are the lack of sheriff deputies out there. And they're going across the county line and shopping in Lancaster and Palmdale where the sales tax is 10%. Folks that live in unincorporated areas of Bakersfield and the metro area, they're going into Bakersfield to do their shopping, and so they're paying an extra cent. And so the question is, are people in unincorporated Kern, are they getting the services that they deserve? No, of course they're not. And they're also spending a lot of their dollars in areas where they're paying a tax that they're not getting the benefit from. Chris Parley, who's a city councilman in Bakersfield, who just announced recently that he was going to retire, he and I went around door to door. I'd say it was maybe a couple of summers ago, and we were talking to county islands that were in my district, but were surrounded by his, and explaining to them that, we really think that you ought to incorporate the level of service that you're going to see with the passage of Measure N. It's going to be better than what you're receiving here. It's inefficient for our sheriff deputies to have to come and respond from Lamont to someplace in South Bakersfield when you could have a Bakersfield police officer sitting in his patrol car across the street, but you have lines of jurisdiction in government, and we think that you're spending your money anyway in Bakersfield, and so you'd probably be better off to incorporate. And 99% of the folks agreed with that, and so we were able to incorporate those two county islands. It was good government. It made sense to folks. But the situation you have here is, explaining the very difficult job of explaining to people how this all works. It is very complicated. We've heard it multiple times, but I don't know if residents who haven't been tracking this issue have the same level of understanding in how government finance works and how much we have done to trim our departments down, and how much we have done to make things as efficient as they possibly can. But you have seen the impact in service out there. Everyone has seen the impact in service, and our staff has seen the impact in those reductions, because you're doing more with less. And that probably is starting to wear on you more now than ever, because it continues to be a trend. I think the difficult question right now is a question of timing. You have a situation where gas prices are through the roof. That's not our fault. I would name a couple of individuals chiefly, one in Washington and one in Sacramento, that are responsible for it, but I'll refrain from doing that right now. I think we all know who they are. I think that we're seeing inflation that is caused a lot by that increase in fuel prices, because everything you buy has to be brought in by a truck. But our folks are seeing it everywhere they go. They're seeing it at the grocery store. Someone may point out, well, they're not going to be paying this at the grocery store. Those things aren't taxed. And so I know that there are all those arguments out there. But I think that the timing is very, very difficult. However, the question does come down to, will I support at this point, if there's a motion, a referral that will bring back a potential ballot measure to this board. Our staff pointed out a lot of news coverage about this issue, that residents, they're concerned about crime, and they think that the county needs more resources, et cetera. But I don't know if we really have a true fleshing out of this question on whether or not voters would pass a tax to enhance public safety and some other county services without that question coming before this board. Because at this point, it's just been kind of a it's been kind of a vague sort of conversation versus I didn't see any coverage that this was going to be on our agenda. And so I think that if we move forward and we bring this referral back, that we're going to start seeing some coverage of this, and we're going to start getting some input from folks. I appreciate the stakeholders that are here that spoke. I appreciate them, the members of our county family that were here that spoke. Of course, I appreciate Raji and her family for the story that she shared. But I think that we haven't had the kind of conversation yet that we need to have. And I think unless we actually do have a question that's coming before this board, that conversation is really not going to happen. And so that's why I will support this referral that Supervisor Perez has made.
Thank you.
And then we'll make a decision on what we do.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other comments from members of the board? No?
I still need a second, so.
There's
always that.
I realize that. So do we have a second from either of my colleagues? No?
I thought that was a second, but I'll go ahead and make the second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Maggard.
So that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda this afternoon. I wanted to make one note. There was recently some coverage about the passing of Harold Hansen, former Bakersfield City Council member. I had the pleasure of serving with Harold for a period of time, 6 years on the council. Supervisor Couch, when he was on the council, he served with him longer than I did, and Supervisor Maggard did as well. He recently passed away. He served for 16 years, and Harold was great to serve with. He truly cared about the city, his constituents. He had a very conservative approach to government, which I greatly appreciated. But I think the thing I appreciated the most about him was what a gentleman he was. And so I'd like to ask that this board will adjourn in his memory to Tuesday, June 28th at 9 a.m., excuse me.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Second.